Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up talking some NFL for the day. Now we are going to be shifting gears a little bit to the NBA, where we had some favorites fall last night, the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets. This was a tough one for me as a Celtics fan, where they led by 20 points in the fourth quarter, and they blow that lead thanks to the likes of Dean Wade taking over for the Cavs. The Celtics were up 91-71 with just under 10 minutes left in regulation, and the Celtics game plan for pretty much the entirety of the game. Keep in mind that the Cavs were without Donovan Mitchell, and then Evan Mobley left with an ankle injury in the third quarter. The thought process was throw everything we have at Darius Garland and make the other players beat us. And for the most part, that was working until we got to the fourth quarter and we got another version of the Cleveland Cavaliers getting one of their role players going on an all-time heat check. We saw it last week when they beat the Dallas Mavericks. It was Max Strus taking over in that game. This time it was Dean Wade. He scores 20 points in the fourth quarter. He went 5 of 5 from 3, and he had the eventual game-winning tip-in dunk with under 20 seconds left to go. Dean Wade specifically single-handedly outscored the Celtics in the fourth quarter as they scored just 17. He finished with a career-high 23 points, and again, you look at how this all sort of played out. I understand that you are looking to just limit Darius Garland. Garland, I think, is one of the more underappreciated players in the NBA. Forgotten that he was an all-star a couple years ago as well. So they were throwing the kitchen sink at him, and I totally understand that. There's a reason why they were up by 20 points. It was working, as well as them playing offense, which they did not do in the fourth quarter. But once a guy like Dean Wade starts knocking down the threes he had back-to-back possessions where he knocked down a three. It was his third of the quarter, and he cut the Celtics lead down to 6. Maybe start keeping eyes on him at all time, and they didn't. They let him get hot. They let him get red hot, and they also, not just that, but they took their eyes off of him on that final possession where, off of a Darius Garland missed layup, he came crashing in from the perimeter. Nobody boxed him out, and he got that tip-in dunk to eventually win the game. So, I mean, this was a tremendous performance by the Cavs. You have to give them credit for what they did here. They went 7 of 9 from 3 in the fourth quarter. That is actually the exact mark that they went in the comeback win that they had against the Mavs. Wasn't quite as drastic. That one was just a 10-point lead, something along those lines against the Mavericks, and they had one of those guys goes 5 for 5 from 3 in that game as well. Of course, it was Strus, including the game winner. So a very similar script for the Cavs in this game. The ultimate thing here when you look at the Celtics is when you talk about them as a contender, there's a little bit of hesitancy. Despite how much talent there is on the roster, it's a matter of those fourth quarter minutes when games get close. Can their offense be nuanced enough to not just be 3 reliant? And I don't think that they've shown that they are just 3 reliant this year, but it was a really ugly fourth quarter for them. Like I mentioned, just 17 points. Tatum, for the All-NBA player that he is, he was just 1 of 11 in the second half. Jaylen Brown didn't take a single shot attempt in this one. If you look at specifically the last 2 possessions of this game, the Cavs had the ball down 1. Darius Garland had Kristaps Porzingis switched on to him on the perimeter. He drives by him, has to do like a little herky-jerky move because Porzingis is in the realm to contest the shot, but he ends up missing with the help defense, and Drew Holiday just falls asleep doesn't box out Dean Wade while he was on him, and we have the Cavs take the lead there with 19 seconds left. On the other end, the Celtics get the ball back. They have a couple timeouts left, and this is something that we've seen from the Celtics plenty of times over the course of the past couple of years, is Tatum slowly walks the ball up the court. He takes too long to get into his action, and he ends up shooting a tough fadeaway from the elbow. That ends up missing. The refs do initially call a foul on Darius Garland, but upon further review, after the Cavs challenge it, it gets overturned. This is a tough situation. It's a tough situation for the Celtics and for the refs alone, because if you look at the way that this was playing out, it did initially look like it was a foul on Garland. He had the hand on the chest of Tatum through the follow-through, so there was contact, but not during the shot itself. And they ultimately said it was Tatum kicking his legs out that initiated the contact. But this shot misses. Kristaps Porzingis can get a little bit dicey maybe because of the foul being called early. But Porzingis had a very clean look at a tip-in shot with 0.7 seconds left in the game. He makes it. Again, not that it counts. Again, maybe that doesn't happen if the whistle isn't blown and there are more players actively playing there. But I think that he had beaten his defender to the rim anyways, and I think that he would have had a real chance for it. But they end up reviewing this. When it gets overturned, it is a jump ball at center court, and at that point, with just 0.7 seconds left, there's really nothing they can do. The thing is, the Celtics blew a 20-point lead, so even if the final, call it 3 seconds, were a little messy, it obviously falls on the shoulders of the team that blew the 20-point lead. This can't be a reffing, disaster class or anything like that. And I think that ultimately, when you look at it, the team didn't deserve the bailout call. Jason Tatum is shooting just 16.7% in the final 10 seconds of clutch time this year. Now, I don't know what the exact league average is. Keep in mind, final 10 seconds, that is a very small, based off of how defenses are playing, a lot of the types of shots you get, they're never easy takes, but 16.7 is obviously not good, and it was a result of having multiple timeouts, the team not calling any, and Tatum getting pressed into that tough fall-away shot. It just always feels like it's that same sort of play. There was a very similar one when they lost to the Denver Nuggets earlier this year, and it's just a very low success rate as a whole. So quickly, I'll finish up here because we do also have to get to the Nuggets as well. But the Celtics win streak comes to an end at 11 games. They hadn't lost since February 1st in the game where they played the Lakers that were without LeBron and Anthony Davis. And it seemed like in that one, they overlooked their opponent. They came out flat and never climbed their way back into the game. And it seemed like, again, this was a little bit of a mental loss, and that is what Jaylen Brown called it after the game. He had a quote talking about Dean Wade. He got hot, but we should have won that game. We haven't really seen a team storm back like that, and that's the thing, is it's letting your foot off the gas because you think that you're comfortable. Where in reality, if you look across the league, we just had the Lakers come back against the Clippers last week. 20-point leads obviously are very big. No breaking news there. But it is easier and easier to do so with three-pointers and the level of offensive creation that we have in the NBA today. And that was really the vibe that I got watching this game, is that they just sort of tuned out once they were up by 20 points. Tatum, again, 1 of 11, but a lot of those, it seemed like he was almost just messing around where they were up by so much. He was trying to pad his stats a little bit. And this is also a Celtics team that was just coming off of slaughtering the Warriors on Sunday. They have a 20-point lead in the fourth quarter of this game where the Cavs were missing 2 starters, and they just let their foot off the gas. I don't think this is a cause for an overreaction, really. You look at Dean Wade, who scored 23 points in this game. You have to go back the previous 9 games that he played to February 8th to have him total 23 points as a whole. So, a guy like that gets hot. Again, it seemed like a mental loss. They hadn't seen it up to this point in the year. They let themselves get comfortable. The dialogue around this game is going to be the fact that they, specifically Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, maybe aren't ready enough to win the finals. I don't take that sort of a, takeaway from a regular season game like this. They lost their first game in a month. But I do think that some of the late game offense issues that we've seen with this team in the past can't fully be put to rest until we see them do so in the playoffs when things get tight. The other big game in this one was the Suns and the Nuggets going to overtime, where the Suns were without Devin Booker in this one. They led big for most of this game. Grayson Allen was tremendous in the first half, going 6 for 6, and then from 3 alone, and then knocked down 2 3-pointers in the first minute and a half of the second half. But the story about the Suns this year has been about the way that they have crumbled in a lot of these fourth quarters. They were up 20 in the third quarter. They were up 11 in the fourth quarter, but they have the worst net rating in the fourth quarter in the NBA this season, and it showed up again. Neither of these teams were really firing on all cylinders when it came to offense. The Nuggets were 3 of 12 from 3. The Suns were 2 of 8. But the Suns scored just 12 points in that fourth quarter. The Nuggets came back. Jamal Murray was really good in this one, and they end up sending it to overtime. And in overtime, it was Kevin Durant, who was 10 of his first 30, so wasn't necessarily a great shooting night. I defend that, actually, because of how you look at how that game played out, and missing Booker, we'll get into that. But Bradley Beal as well, who was also really struggling in this game. He started making some plays for them, and the 2 of them scored or assisted on every point that they scored in overtime. They scored 15, which was in that 5-minute period even more than they scored in the fourth quarter. So the offense got themselves going. They got some stops again, and I think that when you look at sort of the way that this Suns team, because I feel like I'm looking at it more so from the perspective of the Suns. The Nuggets have had some weird turnover stuff as of late. Jokic finished with, I believe it was 7 in this game, and it's just very uncharacteristic of them, but we've seen it more and more as of late. Again, not something that I'm overreacting to. My bigger thoughts on this one sort of came with the Phoenix Suns, who are definitely in the realm of contention this year, but when you look at their offense, it's a lot of iso ball, and it's sort of similar to what I talked about with the Celtics as well, is it just seems like the ball movement sort of disappears. Now again, overtime looked pretty good for them, but even in overtime, like, they were going down to the final seconds of the shot clock on every possession. Brad Beal bailed them out with beating Michael Porter Jr., getting a really nice finger roll at the rim to go. Then there was another possession where Brad Beal dribbled the ball around for the majority of the clock, and then he threw a little bit of an iffy pass to Kevin Durant on the perimeter. He just makes a tough pull-up shot over Aaron Gordon. So, they came alive, but even still, it wasn't the prettiest looking offense, and Devin Booker has really improved as a playmaker over the course of his career, and he effectively plays the point guard position for them. They don't have a point guard on the roster, though, and it's just something that I feel like does play a role in this fourth quarter stuff with them, where it's clockwork. Every single fourth quarter, they find themselves in closer games than they should have been. And you know what? They've been on the comeback side of this as well. There was the game against Chicago, I don't know, a month and a half ago or something, where Kevin Durant took over and ended up hitting the game winner. There was a game against the Kings as well, I believe, that they had where, again, I don't think that on one possession, because of the level of shot making between specifically Durant and Booker, and then whatever else Bradley Beal is going to give you, I think that the individual offensive talent is there, that you can't count them out. But when the game sort of starts to slow down a little bit more and you're playing better defenses, I just don't know. It's hard for me to fully buy into this Suns offense. I think that they have some nice role players around them, but nobody really other than those three. And you know what? Three guys who can create their own shot are also that's a big deal to have. Not every team has that luxury, especially to the level of scorers that are on the Suns. But I just also think that in a 12-minute span, it comes up a little bit more than we would prefer to see from a team that is looking to win a championship. Jamal Murray, after this one, was really upset with the loss, called it one of their worst of the season. Now, it's sort of fair. I don't think it's, again, to be rolled up on as much as you were through the first 2.5 quarters is obviously an ugly one, but when you also get someone on the other team who's 8 of 8 from 3, that can very much be difficult to sort of keep up with in terms of pace, and they were able to sort of overcome some of that adversity and make this a game. But again, the turnover stuff is specifically what I'm looking at with the Nuggets, and I'm just keeping an eye on it because, again, very uncharacteristic of them, and it just hasn't seemed to be as smooth as we've seen from them in the past, where they've really been led by Jokic, one of the pinnacles in terms of ball movement and playing good team basketball. But that is all we have on these two games. We're going to be taking our final break, and when we come back on the other end, I'm going to be giving my tier list of different NBA Finals contenders. So stick with us. We will be right back.